May the chalice we light today be yet another rekindling of devotion, another reawakening of hope, another reimagining of a common future. We affirm together once again this day that for all its terrors and this world still responds to the love and the care that we bring to each day. Welcome.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching down the freedom. Ain't gonna let racism turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let racism turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching down to freedom. Ain't gonna let injustice turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let injustice turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching down to freedom. Ain't gonna let oppression turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let oppression turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching down to freedom. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, keep on fighting, staying enlightened, keep on breathing, keep on believing, keep on loving, and rise above, 'cause I'm not gonna let no hatred turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. I'm not gonna let no hatred turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching down to freedom. Ain't gonna marching down to freedom.
Thank you so much. Beautiful music. I'd like to welcome everyone here today. I am so grateful to be with you, and we're really excited about today's annual meeting. I'd like to take this time to introduce our keynote speakers that will be presenting on reparations and the work that they're doing in the Cherry Hill congregation and in all of New Jersey. Ron Hine is a member of the UU Church in Cherry Hill and a founding officer of UUFANJ. Thank you, Ron. Serving as it's our first president from 2005 to 2008. He is currently the co-chair of the UUCCH Reparations Task Force and is eager to serve as co-chair of the newly established Reparations Task Force of FaithAction. Ron has been involved with community involvement for almost 50 years, working first as a community organizer with citizen groups around the issues of environment, welfare rights, senior housing, senior citizens, and housing. After residing in 5 other states while organizing communities, he has found a home here in New Jersey since 1978 and currently lives in Maple Shade with his wife, Cheryl. He continues to work as a financial planner, helping individuals meet their financial goals, but is training his stepson, Michael, to take over the business so that he can devote more time to social justice work. Since 2015, Ron has concentrated his efforts on racial justice and to bring this issue to the center of his social justice conversation. I would also like to, the co-chair of the task force in Cherry Hill is Dr. Mahdi Ibn Ziyad, a longtime educator and social activist who hails originally from Omaha, Nebraska. Married to Rita with 4 grown stepchildren by previous marriages, Mahdi has been a member of the First UU Church in Philadelphia and UU Church in Cherry Hill. His religious interest is in the area of Pan-Africanist humanism and pantheism. At the Cherry Hill Church, Mahdi helped to inspire concerned church activists to move on the reparations issue. Mahdi has retired as a longtime adjunct professor of philosophy and religion at Rutgers University, Camden in 2020, and in 2013 as a teacher of American history, global studies, and civics at Camden High School. A United States Air Force veteran from the Vietnam era, Mahdi earned undergrad and advanced degrees in political science, sociological theory, and theoretical criminology, taught by a graduate in religio-ethical theory and educational philosophy from the Union Institute Graduate School in Cincinnati. He also attended postgraduate programs in law and divinity in Omaha and Chicago. Mahdi has many more accomplishments, which interested persons can read about in a fuller biography on the FaithAction website. The board is eager to welcome Mahdi to serve with us. Ron and Mahdi, take it away.
Thank you, Mia. Good morning to everyone. And I'd like to thank the board of UU FaithAction for inviting your soon-to-be member of the board, Dr. Mahdi Ibn Ziyad, and I to address you on the formation of the newest task force of UU FaithAction, the Reparations Task Force. As members of the UU Church in Cherry Hill, Mahdi and I have been actively engaged in advocacy for reparations since last year, when we founded our task force and held our first public meeting, as public as you can be on Zoom, that is, last fall. We strongly urge each congregation represented here today to form such a group in your own locality. Our first public forum featured speakers from throughout the social justice movements in New Jersey and the country who have started the advocacy for reparations and have blazed a trail for all of us. Dr. Z, and Mahdi as I like to call him, will give us a wider vision of what has happened to date on the national level in a little bit. What I urge you to contemplate to start, though, as we begin this discussion, is the importance of white citizens to understand this issue and to be vocal. Africans did not just swim to the British colonies in 1617 and volunteer to be unpaid agricultural experts. They were brought in chains against their will and forced to be in servitude with no chance of freedom. And when the Declaration of Independence and the US Constitution were heralded as the dawning of a new age of a social contract between citizens and its government, they were disenfranchised at best, and at worst counted as only 3/4 of a white male. And who is responsible for this calamity? A succession of white men of European stock who knew that they were better than this chattel and demanded total subservience. This history of suppression and slavery has been an accepted reality, both for whites and blacks in this country ever since. Wealth has been generated and maintained by whites, while blacks have been denied and had scorn heaped upon them when they fought for justice and equal treatment. While too many white people today will arbitrarily put up a defense that we're not responsible for the errors in history, I would argue that we have never played on an even playing field to begin with, and it's past time for us to make amends. Black voices demanding reparations makes perfect sense, but I'll tell you that the political equation changes dramatically when we become organized, we're committed, and a fair-minded group of white people make a similar demand. We need to educate ourselves, learn how to communicate our understandings, reach out to other committed white organizations, and begin to demand change of a power structure, excuse me, that remains today firmly entrenched in white male hands. Look at New Jersey. Who really holds the reins of power here? We've got Governor Phil Murphy, white male. Senate President Stephen Sweeney, white male. Speaker of the Assembly, Craig Coughlin, white male. And they're all Irish to boot. A racist mentality has been deeply embedded into the fabric of life in the United States since before George Washington was elected president. It didn't end with the abolition of slavery. It did not end with the end of the first Jim Crow era laws. It didn't end with the civil rights movement. And it won't end until whites are willing to take a complete and honest moral inventory of their own thoughts and actions. Introspection does not come easily to anyone. Usually, the only people who do are the ones who face grave emotional turmoil. But the results of taking such an undertaking can be liberating and beneficial not only to themselves, but to the whole community. The lack of this introspection has resulted in the murder of George Floyd, the Tulsa Massacre, the Rosewood Massacre, thousands of lynchings, the destruction of wealth of almost every Black American family. And the list goes on and on and on. Now is the time we must educate ourselves, our communities, and the decision makers in New Jersey that we need a frank and honest conversation about the necessity for reparations. Now I'd like to introduce a video made by Dr. Mahdi Ibn Said.
Good morning. My name is Mahdi Ibn Ziyad, and as a U.S. military veteran, first let me hand salute the UU Faith Action Board that has today become a brand new ally of the descendants of Africans enslaved in the USA movement for reparations. Welcome aboard. The journey for justice has begun today. As a Black Unitarian Universalist, I fervently believe, like our freed Black ancestors did, that the modern equivalent of 40 acres and a mule is due as compensation for 265 years of chattel slavery that lasted from 1619 to 1865. The movement welcomes yet another new courageous partner, and we need more. As my UU Cherry Hill Church Reparations Task Force co-chair, and now UU Faith Action co-chair, and more importantly, friend, Ron Hine has said earlier, we immediately thank our interim board executive director, Charles Lofton, and the full board itself for both of their willingness to organize a new state-level UU Faith Action Task Force devoted to the standing issue of promoting reparations awareness and action legislation statewide in New Jersey, the beautiful Garden State. Moreover, I thank the board for seeing fit to approve of myself as a new UU board member and one having special responsibilities to giving leadership to advancing the struggle for reparations. I am joyous to be here today as history proceeds with its siren call to wake us up if we have ears to hear. In the summer of 2018, I was asked to share my insights as a longtime Black radical activist and reparations educator to an evening meal with a small group of veteran white Cherry Hill UU church activists. Out of that wonderful meal of sharing emerged our church emphasis on reparations, culminating in our highly successful autumn 2019 Zoom forum. Now, in just a few short years, Faith Action New Jersey has come aboard, and we really, really are encouraged. I'm also encouraged to learn that UU Faith Action is especially concerned about the long 400 plus year history of slavery-initiated racial capitalism in our country, the awful racial wealth gap that lingers and lingers, and the existing economy's negative role in pressing the case for comprehensive reparation action strategies. This morning, my thing is to offer brief remarks referencing some of the main historical features of the unified municipal, state, national, and even international movement for reparations. Here's what I can share in the time allotted. I offer three bits of domestic history that connects the Black past and present. One, as the lesson of the destruction of Black wealth demonstrated during the 1898 slaughter of Wilmington, North Carolina Black folks, the 1921 massacre of middle-class Black working people in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the 1920 mass murder of 150 souls in the self-sufficient Black community of Rosewood, Florida. The accumulation and maintenance of Black wealth is precarious, and at best, given the foul mood swings of white supremacy, and the often too comfortable complacency in much of what passes as the decency of American liberalism. Full-scale economic repair, restitution, and human potential, and legal avenues to non-repetition on a vast scale may help solve the riddle of both Black economic equity and the lingering political disabilities we have become accustomed to. To actualize this arrangement in the future, and I hope this doesn't come to pass, but some measure of long-term U.S. military protection may be necessary to protect Black communities and the newfound reparations economic empowerment that they have garnered. Recall, in the Reconstruction era of 1865 to 1877, Union forces were stationed for 12 years in the states of the White Rebellion. They were put there to protect just free Black lives and their economic opportunities. 2, it's historically instructive that New Jersey lawmakers saw fit in 1844, the same year the Camden County was officially incorporated, to restrict access to the ballot and deny the voting franchise to freed Black men, not women. We see now daily moves by conservative elected officials in other states to handicap the Black vote in response to phony appeals about election fraud in the 2020 vote. For Black folks, what this shows is that our shared democracy is fragile and deceptively weak, especially regarding the fortunes of racially oppressed people. Thankfully, the pending New Jersey Reparations Task Force establishment legislation, which reflects the national legislation, H.R. 40 in the House. The New Jersey Senate Bill S-322 and Assembly Bill A-711 both read like a textbook of why racist events in our state's development, including past and current voter restrictions require reparations repair. Third, we Black folks have often suffered assaults on our ability to engage in meaningful or productive intellectual output. Recall the history of schoolhouse and college segregation and the educational disparities based on Garden State racism. I hope the latest news of spurious white supremacist attacks on K-12 and university teachings of critical race theories is understood as a concurrent assault on the reparations perspective in U.S. history telling. I'm an old history teacher. The opponents of reparations falsely claim that reparations is an un-American revisionist babble with no place in the standard Eurocentric history curriculum. And well, I'm way out of time. I must conclude. The 3 bits of reparations-related history may be among those key items that our new our newly launched task force, may want to explore and prioritize for future action. Please don't forget to zoom in on our Cherry Hill Church Juneteenth Reparations Forum next Saturday morning. Thank you.
First, though, I'd like to remind people or tell people that we've put together a bibliography of some readings and some information. It's just posted right here. Thank you, Emily. In regards to how you can get some more information in regards to reparations, its history, and how it fits into what's going on today. And, you know, really, some people are ready to have this dialogue about reparations. As we've mentioned, you know, our church in Cherry Hill, we've held a public forum on reparations. And as Marty mentioned, we're having a workshop this coming Thursday. In addition, the UU congregation at Montclair, under the leadership of Dion Ford, has held services on reparations. I apparently just adopted the 8th principle at their last meeting and have held many discussions for the need for action on this issue. So, you know, and in addition, remember the thousands of people who flooded the streets when George Floyd was viciously murdered by a white Minneapolis police officer. Everyone who saw that video that young Black woman made on her phone, which I just saw this weekend, was honored by the Pulitzer people. They knew that these actions were just wrong. Our society could not accept this reprehensible deed in a loving and caring America. Tens of thousands of people, white, Black, Latinx, Asians, marched together seeking for justice and change. And yet, a year later, what has changed? Yes, Derek Chauvin was convicted and he's currently in jail. Who knows for how long? But what else has happened? Have the laws changed in any meaningful way? Have the police forces changed their practices of chokeholds, tear gas, rubber bullets? With all the talk of defund the police, has any community taken any significant steps to make even piecemeal changes? No, the embers of outrage have grown colder over the months. And it's now time for us to roll up our sleeves and do the work necessary to propose bold changes and follow it through to success. The work will not be easy, but I challenge any white person on this Zoom call to fully begin to understand the great efforts that any person of color must go through every day simply to survive and prosper. Would you call that easy? Why should we be given as whites preferential treatment? And yet that is how we have structured our lives ever since we've been born. We need to be the first to take a candid self-examination and be honest about our own reactions to life. We need to read about and learn about all the wrongs that have been conveniently hidden from the history books, like the lynchings and the Tulsa massacre. Do we fully understand that redlining took place only 40 years ago that prevented a lot of Blacks from getting mortgages? The fact that Black net worth is only 1% of what whites got, that didn't happen by accident. Housing, education, finances, healthcare have always been given for most people in the white suburbs, like, it's what we deserve. Yet these commodities have been kept from Blacks, sometimes maliciously, other times just by circumstances, but they've always had the goal of keeping people in their proper place. UU Faith Action will begin a petition drive. And this is our first foray to encourage people to get involved. The petition is about the legislation that Monty talked about, Bills A7711 and S322. And all we're doing is something very simple. We're just asking for a task force to be created to look at what's happened, to be honest, and then to make recommendations to the legislature. That's it. And we call on all of you today to sign these petitions, carry this back to your congregations, study, organize. We of the UUFA Reparations Task Force will be leading the way in engaging the support of other primarily white denominations to join with us and our Black sisters and brothers in seeking an open and honest dialogue to lead to meaningful changes. And we recognize that all congregations may not be as organized as Cherry Hill and Montclair right now, but we're here to support you, to answer your questions, to be available to you. And in the words of one of the songs from our hymnal, lean on us so that we can lean on you on this struggle that will bring light and justice to all Americans. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Shannon Elaine, and I am the new part-time development director for UU Faith Action New Jersey. I was recruited by my friend and colleague, Mia Morse, who is president of the board. Mia and I have worked together for several years at the Matheny School and Hospital, where we have written many successful grants for Matheny, a wonderful organization that serves children and adults with medically complex disabilities. But I am honored to be with you today, working with UU Faith Action New Jersey, an organization that for 10 years has been on the forefront of the fight for justice, reflecting the Unitarian Universalist values of dignity, equality, and compassion for every person in the policy arena and throughout our great state. I am especially mindful of joining you in your important work during an unprecedented time in history. Too often, divisive political discourse has replaced respectful debate in our public square. The health of our environment is suffering. Reproductive rights are in jeopardy. Immigrants face an uphill battle in their quest for peace and asylum. Hate crimes and gun violence are featured almost daily in our news cycle. And the recent pandemic has revealed harsh disparities in our economic and healthcare systems. And as Ron and Dr. Mahdi Ziad so eloquently spoke about, the need for conversations about racial justice and reparations is more urgent than ever and tragically long overdue. Now more than ever, the compassionate voice of a faith-based organization such as ours is needed to bring humane, values-based dialogue to the policy issues we face. Throughout this unprecedented year, UU Faith Action New Jersey has been a steady voice of compassion and advocacy in Trenton and throughout New Jersey, bringing forth real change in our state's policy, positively affecting the lives of the marginalized. In January, thanks in part to lobbying efforts by our organization, a bill allowing the undocumented immigrants to apply for and receive a driver's license was signed into law. In addition, testimony, education, and advocacy efforts by UU Faith Action New Jersey positively affected bills that would reduce the detention of undocumented persons in our state, introduce restorative and transformative justice for youth in our most populated communities, promote environmental justice, racial justice, and healthcare for all. UU Faith Action New Jersey would not be able to do this important work without the passionate engagement and financial support of its volunteers, committee members, and task force members, as well as the support of other concerned individuals. The coming year represents many legislative opportunities, but we also expect several challenges. UU Faith Action New Jersey stands ready to advocate, educate, and organize to continue to provide an informed, effective, and steadfast faith-based voice on the issues we all care about. It is in that spirit that we respectfully ask that you consider donating today. You can choose to make a single donation, or if you would like your gift to have an even greater impact, please consider a monthly donation through automated withdrawal on a credit card or a bank account. Aside from being convenient to the donor, these recurring donations allow us to have the security of knowing how much revenue is coming in and allow us to plan, leading to more effective strategy. In addition, if you have the good fortune of working for a company that matches your donations, please indicate that on the form, as it will make your generosity that much more impactful. The majority of our funding comes from individuals like you. We are grateful for your continued engagement and generosity, as well as your consideration today. As we continue the fight for justice and equality, know we cannot reach our goals without your support. Thank you, and I look forward to working with you all in the coming months.
I want to thank you all for being here. Your presence and commitment to this organization continues to warm my heart, and for that, I am forever grateful. In the interest of time, I will be brief and just want to thank our volunteers and staff that keep us moving forward, improving the lives of our fellow New Jerseyans. Without our incredible task force chairs, Susan and Anne, Leandra, Ray and Peggy, Carol and Nicole, Ted and Ray, the entire youth leadership of FAIR, and our congregational liaisons, we wouldn't exist. Thank you for your consistent and loving dedication every day. Thank you to Ken Marino. You want to wave, Ken, if you're back, for being our first and awesome ministerial intern. Your work certainly made a difference, and you're leaving a legacy for us to reflect and utilize. In fact, we're looking forward to welcoming Laura Kushner as our ministerial intern starting this fall. Thank you to Reverend Rob Gregson for your incredible work this year, and we welcome you back in your new role as executive consultant. Please know we are fully supportive. We are full and supportive partners on your journey to recovery from COVID. And thank you, Emily Parker and Charles Laughlin. a dynamic duo for standing in the gap when we needed you and taking us to the next level as we begin to live into our very ambitious and transformational work of our strategic plan. We are called as UUs to be a bold people and to work better and to make the lives of others better in the world. In that light, I have asked, and our board has accepted my proposal, that we fund up to 15 people to attend General Assembly this year. There will be more information coming on that if you'd like to apply to attend. If you've never been to General Assembly, it's the gathering of all of our Unitarian Universalists, and it's quite a transformative and salvific experience that you should experience if you can. I look forward to another year as your president, and I hope that you gain a lot from this meeting and continue to touch lives and make a difference wherever you can. Thank you.
I wanted to start, though, by acknowledging the world in which we're living right now, because as this year is drawing to a close, we are still in the midst of the COVID-19 global pandemic, and almost 600,000 lives have been lost in the US alone. And worldwide, that number becomes a staggering 3.7 million people. This has been an unprecedented year. It has been a year of social distancing and masking, of Zoom meetings and online education, and a requirement of flexibility and adaptation. And even as we begin to envision a path towards in-person gatherings again, we acknowledge that these are uncertain times. Also, it's hard to believe, but we are just a few months removed from what was perhaps the most divisive election in US history. And only in January did we see a sitting president incite insurrection. And in the aftermath of all of this, one of the things we know for sure is that voting rights are under attack. And most specifically for those people who hold marginalized identities, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. We cannot stand idly by. We must be involved. The work that we are doing is more important than it ever was. And I want to say that despite the challenges of this last year, I think FaithAction New Jersey has done an admirable job. I want to give a special thank you right now to the entire board under the leadership of Mia Morse, because you really have stepped into the role of this place, this time, this now, and figuring out how to do the work. I also want to acknowledge our task force chairs to second what Mia was saying. So much of the work of Faith Action happens because of the dedicated task force chairs who do such great job. And I'm going to put in a little plug, because we always need more resources. We always need more support. So if you've been on the sidelines and you've been thinking about maybe you should be getting involved, this is the time to do that. Please, please get involved. We need you. Unitarian Universalism needs you, and New Jersey needs you. But I think most importantly of all, as Mia said, it's only the hard work of all the dedicated individuals who show up, who follow through, and who have given so generously during this time, not only of their finances, which they have, but also just of your time and your talent. And we can never say thank you enough for that. We so appreciate the work that you are doing. We did have some legislative achievements. I'm only going to lift up two of them really quickly, because again, I think you will hear more about them. The cumulative impacts bill was signed into law in the fall this year, and what a huge victory. Perhaps the strongest environmental justice legislation in any state at the moment is in New Jersey, and UUFANJ had a lot to do with that. And we continue to be involved in the driver's license rulemaking process. so that our immigrant friends have access to driver's licenses. And we were instrumental in making sure that those rules that did not follow the intent of the legislation were reviewed. So many other things that are going on. All of our task forces are doing such great work, as you're going to hear. Please, 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 if you can, get involved, take a more active role. There's more to be done. We had a fabulous Fall Issues Conference this year, held online, 137 registered attendees, and the launch of FAIR, who you're going to hear about a little bit more as well, our youth caucus. Such amazing work. And a special thanks to Reverend Rob Gregson, who really made that work. You got that off the ground and you've kept it going. And thanks to all the others who have had a huge part in making that successful, which includes Corinne Murphy, includes Leandra Perez, and also includes Emily Parker, all of whom have stepped in and done such fabulous work with our youth caucus. We also had an amazingly successful UU Justice Gala this year. That was online in March. We had over 183 participants registered for that event. We honored former Executive Director, Reverend Craig Hirschberg, and also environmental activist Kim Gaddy. And that event raised more than $20,000 for UU Faith Action. We were floored by your generosity. But now we're not surprised. We know that that's what you can do and what you will do. And if we continue to make those kinds of commitments, there's so much forward on, all of which are extremely, extremely important. And in addition, I want you to know that one of the things I think that UU Faith Action is doing really, really well, the partnering that we're doing with our coalition partners and our allies. We are not doing this work alone. We are finding a way to be in community with others, and that is so vital for the work that we do. It all matters, and it all matters all the time. We continue to believe that UU Faith Action is a substantial voice, not only representing UUs across the state, but to those allies and coalition partners. The work for justice matters more than ever. I'm reminded of something Iris Marion Young said. She was the late political theorist and feminist based in the University of Chicago. And she wrote this great book called Justice and the Politics of Difference. And in that book, she named 5 faces of oppression that she called them. She said the 5 faces of oppression are exploitation, marginalization, powerlessness, cultural imperialism, and violence. I can say to you that I genuinely believe that UU Faith Action New Jersey is committed and well positioned to make a real difference in opposing those oppressions in all their forms. So friends, let us be about the work for justice, for equity, and for compassion. Thank you.
Okay, you've heard a lot about what's been accomplished over the past year or so, and we certainly have had our challenges with the pandemic, as everybody else has. The one thing, though, that we have done extremely well financially during the pandemic, and that's largely due to the generosity of our members and friends and congregations, and the incredible work of our staff and the leadership on the board. So a real shout out for the fact that, as difficult as it's been financially, we've done very well. Last fiscal year, we again, our income exceeded our expenses by a considerable amount. Actually, there's an error there. I see the net income was actually 37,000, not 7,000. So last year was very successful. Our income was higher, our expenses were lower. And the same thing this year. We've had, we've lost staff, but we've also gained incredible resources in Charles and in Emily, and it's just made an incredible difference. So again, we go into the next year in good financial shape. Next year's budget, which with great appreciation the congregations have approved, we're proposing a budget of $175,000. The bulk of which will come from individual donations, which have been increasing steadily thanks to your support. What we're looking to do, as Mia mentioned earlier, that the board developed a strategic plan this year, and part of the plan was to look to increase our capacity in terms of improving our effectiveness, and which translate into additional staffing. So that's what we're looking to do. There's still some uncertainty there, but we are looking to, our budget allows for, to increase our staff depending on, various circumstances, and then so this year we're showing about a 10% increase. Next year we're in accordance with the strategic plan, we're looking to increase by another 10 to 15%. So again, this is all consistent with our strategic plan in terms of growing both the capacity and the effectiveness of UU Faith Action. So I don't know if there's time for any questions, but that's a brief rundown of where we are financially.
Thanks.
Hello, everyone. As we all know, the past year was so extremely challenging due to quarantine and other restrictions emanating from COVID-19. It meant that we could not meet with our coalition partners in person or schedule another event such as the one we had in 2018, Know Her Truth, Life Behind Bars for Women in New Jersey at the Monmouth congregation. On the other hand, there were a lot of opportunities for Zoom meetings with coalition partners. Work went on. Our overriding goal was to intentionally place the reproductive freedoms of marginalized groups at the center of our agenda. As many of us know, Sister Song Women of Color Reproductive Justice Collective was the first organization founded to build a reproductive justice movement. In 1997, 16 women of color-led organizations representing 4 communities of color, Native American, Latin American, African American, and Asian American, launched the nonprofit to build a national reproductive justice movement. Our task force is very aware of our role as allies in this movement. Generally, the task force has been able to do this because Thrive New Jersey, a somewhat diverse coalition for reproductive rights, has a good understanding of reproductive justice. Our other community partner, New Jersey Prison Justice Watch Monitoring Group, advocates for women in prison, most of whom are people in marginalized groups. This year has been a major focus on the Reproductive Freedom Act, which safeguards reproductive care, upholds basic rights and justice, and respects decision-making throughout pregnancy for all women, regardless of race, class, sexuality, ability, or citizenship status. The bill expands the protections of reproductive justice beyond the right to abortion to include protections and expanded access to birth control and pregnancy-related care, as well as eliminating medically unnecessary restrictions that block access to care. It basically enshrines Roe v. Wade and other issues into law. The bills have been introduced in both houses, but have not been posted to be heard in either the Assembly or Senate committees. It appears that the legislature will hold a vote during the lame duck session. In the meantime, the reproductive justice members are attending abortion access meetings and other subcommittees, trying to balance keeping the issue alive with the knowledge that nothing will happen until the lame duck session. Another goal is to strengthen maternal health and reduce maternal mortality, including supporting the Maternal Mortality Review Commission and affirm our commitment to ending New Jersey's shameful record as a state with one of the worst Black-white racial disparities in maternal deaths in the nation. We are monitoring this issue through Thrive New Jersey and the Maternal Justice Subcommittee. The bills being followed are Home Births Bill A4011, requires health insurance carriers to provide coverage for home births, A1073 requires preeclampsia testing for certain pregnant women. A1077 requires DOH to develop a plan to improve access to prenatal mood and anxiety disorder screening. And A3633, which establishes requirements concerning the provision of postpartum care information and the development of individualized postpartum care plans. We also support the strategic plan of the Sexual Education Subcommittee of Thrive New Jersey, which challenges heterosexist and cissexist assumptions about sexuality and gender. The subcommittee is working on a bill to submit to the legislature that addresses the issues above. Currently, there has not been a bill introduced. Working with the Criminal Justice Task Force, we monitored the situation at Edna Mahan Correctional Facility for Women, the only women's prison in the state. The facility houses women who are disproportionately Black and brown, women with disadvantaged backgrounds, and transgender women. We had expected to focus on the work of the Commission to Study Sexual Assault, Misconduct, and Harassment by Staff against inmates in the New Jersey State Correctional Facilities, which has been set up as part of the Dignity Act. However, the commission only recently had all of its members appointed. In the meantime, the Department of Justice investigated and wrote a scathing report about EMCF, which was followed by hearings. On January 1st, 2021, 3 women were forcibly removed from their cells, beaten, and physically assaulted. When this became known, several guards were charged with the crimes. More hearings occurred. This past week, another turn occurred. The governor received an investigative report from a former comptroller and announced that he plans to close Edna Mahan. 2 days later, Commissioner Marcus Hicks resigned from his post at the Department of Corrections. It is clear that changes will occur, but the process of closing the prison will be a long one. The task force plans to monitor these changes and advocate for compassionate and humane treatment of the prisoners, as well as a plan for the future that will reform the culture that the women have been living in. We also had planned to monitor the implementation of the address confidentiality law. There has been no action, most likely due to COVID. That concludes our report. Thank you for listening, and happy Pride.
This is Ted Fetter. Rich Held and I have a conversation back and forth about 3 points that the Immigration Justice Task Force has worked on. The first is driver's license for undocumented people. Now, as of May 1st, after 10 years of advocates working on this cause, undocumented persons in New Jersey are now able to obtain a driver's license, a standard driver's license. Mission accomplished?
That is really good news, Ted, but there's another side to consider, because if all driver age New Jersey citizens obtained a new federal high security license when renewing or obtaining a license for the first time, then only our undocumented immigrants would have the standard license, which would set them apart.
So we have prepared an op-ed piece urging citizens whose driver's licenses come up for renewal to renew them with a standard license. And those drivers, those New Jerseyans, can use other identifications such as passports for their commercial air travel. And the side benefit of this op-ed marketing that we're doing is that we're developing a list of contacts at New Jersey news media for future op-eds that all of Faith Action can use. We're learning how to give Faith Action greater ability to have our editorial views published in newspapers and blogs. On another issue, we have good news too. It has to do with COVID relief payments. On May 7th, Governor Murphy announced the Fund for Excluded New Jerseyans, providing a one-time relief payment to low-income persons who have been excluded from federal relief programs. And the fund has $40 million of the federal COVID relief money blocked out for New Jersey in it. How we doing, Rich?
Well, Ted, here again, the not so good news. That 40 million will serve less than 10% of those individuals and families in need of aid. And the one-time payments of $1,000 that are proposed per individual are certainly insufficient to make up for a year of hardship.
So what are we doing about it? We're supporting our allies, Make the Road New Jersey and the New Jersey Alliance. Right now, there's a letter being prepared urging the legislature to add much more money to the governor's proposal, specifically a level of $2,000 per individual who has so far been excluded from COVID relief. That means a total budget of $989 million. Now that's a huge amount, but our state has about 10 billion in reserve funds right now. So we think this is something that we need to sign on. The last program we want to highlight has to do with cutting back on detaining persons detained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement for eventual deportation. There is state legislation pending, and the Law and Public Safety Committees in both the Senate and Assembly have approved that bill, S3361, A5207, which would prohibit a renewal of contracts with ICE and any new contracts with ICE. Currently, 3 counties, Essex, Hudson, and Bergen, as well as a private prison in Union County, are holding detainees. So there's hope, right, Rich?
Well, yeah, it's good to hear that there's finally some movement on those bills, but as we know, those are just steps in the process to get both the Senate and the Assembly to actually vote on those bills. And here's the bad news. The summer recess is about 2.5 weeks away. There are some related efforts going on urging counties to end the detention of immigrants on their own. And Essex County has already shown their intention to do exactly that.
Now, we continue to support the enactment of S3361, Assembly 5207. We're joining with other advocates for the Senate Budget Committee to list the bill and for a floor vote in the Assembly. As detainees are released from New Jersey facilities, of course, we urge that they be returned home rather than be sent to other ICE facilities. Curfews and ankle bracelets are fully able to let ICE track them if they are determined to deport them after their hearings. Detention is almost never necessary or desirable. Its main effect is to coerce our neighbors voluntarily to agree to their own deportation. And I just want to thank everybody who was able to reply to the FaithAction Action Alert just a few days ago about that Senate Budget Committee action. We're still going to have that kind of invitation for you all to be involved. Thank you for your interest. Tom?
Well, we just want to add, by the way, that we do meet, the Immigration Justice Task Force meets the second Monday of the month. So this coming Monday, we will be meeting at 8 o'clock, a Zoom meeting, of course, and we invite you to attend if you're interested.
Okay, so I'm speaking on behalf of the Environmental Justice Task Force, which advocates for the right of all people to have access to clean air, clean water, and a clean environment. COVID restrictions made it pretty tough, but we have great chairs, Peggy Meadow from Ocean County and Ray Nichols from Princeton, and our many dedicated and active members helped them to accomplish a lot this past year, mostly by spending a lot of time on Zoom and on phones, at government hearings and meetings of environmental groups in order to get our message across. We focused on 3 major issues: mandatory emissions reductions in environmental justice communities. The worst emissions come from, or the most emissions come from transportation, especially buses and trucks, So we give special attention to the large heavy-duty vehicles. Second, mitigating lead in the New Jersey water supply. And third, building support for a green amendment to the New Jersey Constitution, which would say what I said in the first sentence. All New Jerseyans should have access to clean air, clean water, and a clean environment, and probably none of us do. This past year, we continued to build personal relationships and partnerships with environmental justice organizations and other environmental groups working on clean energy programs. Kim Gaddy of Clean Water Action and Maria Lopez Nunez of the Ironbound Community Corporation spoke at our monthly meetings to bring us up to speed on realities of the excessive pollution in their neighborhoods. David Pringle, legislative consultant to a number of New Jersey environmental organizations, gave us a tutorial on the legislative process and on effective strategies for impacting legislation. You may remember last year, Dr. Anna Baptista and Dr. Nikki Sheets were keynote speakers at our annual meeting. We're pleased to announce that they were appointed to the newly formed White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council. Also, I was appointed to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection's Environmental Justice Advisory Council, giving us a direct line of communication with that department. We had an exciting advance for environmental justice in New Jersey last year. The Cumulative Impacts Bill was passed and is now known as the Environmental Justice Law. It took 10 years of effort from the environmental justice community. It will significantly reduce emissions in overburdened communities, but the job isn't complete yet. We are now participating in Department of Environmental Protection rulemaking meetings to ensure that the law is implemented properly. Unfortunately, there are several proposals already to cite polluting facilities in Newark in an effort to sneak in under the wire before the rules are actually in place. Other successes, plans for several fossil fuel pipelines were stopped, and the fossil fuel-fed New Jersey Transit Power Plant was put on hold in order to investigate a feasible solar alternative. Unfortunately, this is a never-ending battle. As the regulatory process grinds on, several pipeline projects are now being reconsidered, and the Southern Reliability Link pipeline in South Jersey won their case to proceed in court. We also provided input on the community solar program, which provides solar to low and middle income families. We promoted the Clean Energy Equity Act that will make energy efficiency funds more available to them. We participated in the New Jersey Protect Against Climate Threats Initiative and the Energy Efficiency Coalition, and provided comments for the Wind Strategy Plan. We followed several bills on lead in drinking water. One bill requires public water systems to provide notice of elevated lead levels in drinking water to customers and local officials, and requires landlords to notify tenants of elevated lead. At present, if you own your house, you can hear about having elevated lead. If you rent, you may not hear. Anyway, this was recently passed and signed by the governor. Another bill requires public water systems to inventory and replace lead service lines within 20 years. It's still pending. We continue to advocate and educate about the New Jersey Green Amendment. Several congregations have hosted Maya Van Rossum, so many of you may have heard of her. She's a great speaker. She's the leader of the Green Amendment movement, and she explains the importance of a constitutional amendment guaranteeing the right of all residents to clean air, clean water, and a clean environment. If enough legislators in both houses sponsor the bill, it'll be on the November ballot for voters to decide on whether or not to adopt it. Recognizing that funding is a key component to most of our favorite bills, we are providing input to this year's state budget process. Specifically, we opposed spending billions of dollars on an expansion of the New Jersey Turnpike, suggesting that instead the money be spent on expanding and electrifying New Jersey transit. We also spoke in favor of the Clean Energy Fund spending only for its intended purpose, to promote energy efficiency and renewable energy projects. That fund is regularly rated to fund other things. Also, finally, we continue to produce a fabulous monthly newsletter that highlights events, educational opportunities, hearings, and news articles about many New Jersey environmental issues. The newsletter is available for anyone to read on the Environmental Justice Task Force webpage, which you can get to from the UU Faith Action page. Just click on environmental justice and then news and blogs. So thank you. And oh, just a reminder, we meet the first Thursday of every month at noon. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Leandra Puris, UU Faith Action board member and chair of the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force. Today is the 5-year anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting, where 49 people were shot and killed because of their sexual orientation. I would like to now take a moment of silence to remember all the victims of gun violence. It was a hot summer afternoon. Right down the street from me, there were kids eating ice cream at Dairy Queen, people playing tennis, teenagers at the basketball court, and people walking their dogs. I heard a loud bang. What was that? I soon found out that it was the sound of a gunshot, and a 20-year-old man lay dying on the basketball court. This shocked me. Things like this don't happen in my safe Teaneck neighborhood. This happened last Saturday during Gun Violence Awareness Weekend. A few days later, an 18-year-old high school student was shot and killed in Maplewood. And last month at a birthday party in Bridgeton, there was a mass shooting where 12 people were injured and 3 people died. These were just a few of the hundreds of shootings that happen every day. Even though New Jersey has the second strictest gun laws in the country, people are still being shot and killed. There is an epidemic of gun violence in this country, which has become so commonplace, many people just take it for granted and say, oh, well, this is the way it is. But this is a public health crisis and it needs to end. So to our wonderful task force, what have we been working on? We've been representing our gun violence prevention task force at UU Faith Action events, such as the overall theme of the 2020 UU Faith Actions Issues Conference was gun violence prevention. We had 2 excellent GVP keynote speakers, Jai Patel from Students Demand Action, and Kelly Sampson, Senior Counsel and Director of Racial Justice for Brady. And at last year's annual meeting, Carol Stiller, President, State Executive Committee of Brady, New Jersey, was our special guest speaker. At our task force meetings, we have had guest speakers from Moms Demand Action and Students Demand Action, and have had Extreme Risk Protection Order and Be Smart presentations. We will be having more guest speakers from our coalition partners at upcoming meetings. Legislation. We are working on tracking New Jersey and federal legislation, including several bills from Governor Murphy's legislative package, Combating Gun Violence 3.0, and President Biden and Vice President Harris's 6 initial actions to address gun violence. Taking action. Gun Violence Awareness Day / Wear Orange Weekend was started to honor the life of Hadia Pendleton, a 15-year-old high school student who was shot and killed in her hometown in Chicago, a week after marching in President Obama's 2013 inaugural parade. Activists celebrated her life by wearing the color orange, which is the color that hunters wear so they are not shot. The task force took action by emailing a proclamation to their town councils asking for a Gun Violence Awareness Day every year on the first Friday in June. The team also asked their town councils to honor all victims of gun violence by having Wear Orange Weekend in their town. We will continue this effort next year to get even more councils to sign on. Team members sent the proclamation to over 13 New Jersey town councils, and 4 town councils have signed the proclamation so far. Over the past several years, UU members have been part of the working group for the Safe Storage Bill, including Reverend Rob Gregson, Janine Clayton-Coyne, Helen Ewan, and I am now honored to join that team. The task force members will be working on writing letters to legislators to support the Safe Storage for Firearms bill. Networking. We have been networking and making connections with coalition partner organizations, especially BIPOC organizations, to foster relationships where we can work towards fighting racism and engage in grassroots racial and social justice campaigns. We have co-sponsored events with coalition partners such as the March for Our Lives Roundtable with attorney generals discussing the iron pipeline, policing, and more. The panelists included the New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania attorney generals. The chief deputy attorney general stood in for the Delaware attorney general, who ironically was in the hospital visiting 3 police officers who had been shot. Gun violence prevention is a crucial issue all over the country, including New Jersey. No more excuses, no more thoughts and prayers without action, no more delay. Together, we can save lives. If you're interested in getting involved, we are always looking for new members to join our task force. Also, I'm actively seeking a co-chair to join our team. If you're interested or have any questions, please contact me at gvprevention@UUFaithAction, New Jersey. And we will be meeting next Wednesday, June 16th at 1:00 p.m. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My co-chair, Susan McDonald from Princeton, couldn't be here today. I'm going to try and be quick because of the time, but access to the full report should be available, I'm assuming, in a few days on the UU Faith Action website. This year, we focused on 3 priority categories rather than specific bills, because a lot of times the bills are changing, or some of them just don't proceed at all, don't even end up being heard. So the first was juvenile justice bills. The second was reentry services, and the third category was dismantling racism. So for the juvenile justice bills, we're working closely with one of our partners, New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, on a bill, Restorative and Transformative Justice for Youth bill. If you haven't heard of this bill, I'm going to put a link into the chat to an op-ed that Charles Laughlin published on this bill. And that one is, Charles testified at the initial committee hearings. It's being scheduled for both the Senate and the Assembly Appropriations Committees. On the reentry services side, we're focusing on 3 different bills. One, to expand and ensure access to residential community services. The second, to expand the existing Fair Release and Reentry Act to provide services in a timely manner. And the third is to provide services to people who have served their full mandatory sentences with the same reentry service that people on parole receive. Under dismantling racism, one of the bills is the one that our new reparations task force was talking about. So initially, this was one of the bills that we identified within the criminal justice task force. And then we realized that it really required a lot of education and a lot of helping people get familiar with this to help it move forward. So we spun off a separate task force within UU Faith Action to address that issue. The second is one that would more narrowly prescribe the use of deadly force by law enforcement. And the third is a concurrent resolution to amend the state's constitution to specify that slavery and involuntary servitude is unconstitutional. And again, in this case, that bill has not proceeded in hearings. We're trying to get Senator Sweeney to post that for a hearing in the Senate, and that has not yet happened. So we recognize the need for more education on that bill. If you look at the Facebook page, the UU Faith Action Facebook page, there's an event coming up Friday night to learn more about that issue. And watch for an education alert. Early next week, we'll be getting that information out as well. Nicole spoke about working with our coalition partner, New Jersey Prison Justice Watch. The Criminal Justice Task Force have been working closely with the Reproductive Justice Task Force and that coalition to address the issues, not just at Ed and Man, but across New Jersey prisons. Again, the same Department of Corrections that is allowing beatings to happen at Neman is happening at prisons everywhere in New Jersey. We're also recognizing the need to make sure that even when we help pass bills, that they're not always implemented in a timely manner. So again, as Nicole mentioned, the Dignity Act was supposed to have been implemented in August of 2020, and some key provisions of that act that were not implemented would have helped bring attention to the issues at Neman and address them more quickly than they were addressed. Similarly for solitary confinement and other bills. So we recognize that even passing a bill, we still need to continue to follow it and make sure these are happening. Also want to mention that our task force is also looking for new leadership. If anyone's interested in becoming a chair or co-chair, please let us know. We meet on the first Tuesday of every month, although we won't be meeting in July. So the next meeting will be Tuesday, August 3rd at 8 p.m. And thank you.
Good morning. My name is Zoe Laffler, and I'm one of the co-leaders of Faith Action Youth Inclusivity Representatives, which is also called FAIR. Our group first began with 5 youth at the Fall Issues Conference. After discussing different social justice issues in our communities, we decided to create a youth-led group pertaining to racial justice issues in New Jersey. After putting a flyer together and sharing it around, we were able to recruit over 20 youth to join our group. After brainstorming, we decided to write letters to our school administrators to discuss sharing an assembly that we would create based on racial justice issues that we would share in our districts. We received a few interested schools, and we'll be working with them next fall to share our assembly with their students. We've also worked on a social media campaign to create small video segments of the BIPOC community on different components of racial justice in our modern world. We look forward to starting our group back up in September and completing some really amazing work. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Carolyn Baldacchini. Together with Mia Morris and Tom Moran, we are UU Faith Action NJ Nominating Committee. This is the time of year when we say thank you to our wonderful board members for serving on the board. And so we say thank you, Tim Katz, for serving on the board. Thank you, Corinne Murphy, for serving on the board. Thank you, Bill Slezak, for serving on the board. And thank you, Mark Williams, for serving on the board. We thank you for your service and your dedication to UU Faith Action NJ. This is also an exciting time, a time to welcome new board members and thank our board members for agreeing to serve another term. Please join us in welcoming Nancy Griffith, Madhi Ibn Ziyad, Zoe Laffler, Clara Hanger, Phil Lubitz, Mia Morris, and Leandra Pires to the board. Welcome. We accept nominations to the board year-round. If you are interested in serving on the board, or if you would like to nominate someone for the board, please send us an email. You can also ask for our email in the chat. Thank you for joining us today at our annual meeting.
So folks, our closing words today are from the Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson, fitted for this day. We are the ones we have been waiting for. We are not perfect, but we are perfectly fitted for this day. We are not without fault, but we can be honest to face our past as we chart a new future. We are the ones we have been waiting for. May we be bold and courageous to chart that new future. May we have faith in a future that is not known. We are the ones we have been waiting for.